Most mysteries don't disappear. They get buried, under soil, under stone, under cities rebuilt on top of older cities, under tombs no one dares open, under caves where the air itself feels ancient enough to remember things. And that is what makes underground mysteries different from ordinary ones. They are not missing. They are waiting. Some are hidden because people forgot them. Some were buried on purpose. And some are still underground because the moment we disturb them, we risk destroying the only evidence we have. Tonight, we're going beneath the surface, to real places, real discoveries, and real underground mysteries that still refuse to give up their full story. These are the top 10 dark mysteries buried beneath the earth. 10. The unopened tomb of Qin Shi Huang. In 1974, farmers digging in China's Shanxi province struck one of the biggest archaeological discoveries in history, the Terracotta Army, thousands of life-size clay soldiers buried near the mausoleum complex of Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor. That discovery changed history, but it also opened a much darker question. If the army lies outside the central mound, then what is still inside the emperor's actual tomb? Ancient accounts describe a burial chamber of astonishing scale, complete with rivers of mercury and mechanical traps designed to kill intruders. The emperor's tomb mound remains unopened, and archaeologists have repeatedly hesitated to dig into it because whatever is inside could be damaged by exposure the moment the chamber is breached. That is what makes this mystery so powerful. It isn't just a lost tomb. It is a known tomb that we still cannot safely enter. We know where it is. We know who is supposed to be inside. We even have ancient written descriptions of what may be waiting there. And still, the heart of the site remains sealed, as if one of the most important rulers in history is still successfully keeping the living out. The dark mystery here isn't that we have no clues, it's that the clues are sitting above a chamber we still can't fully face. And if one emperor's grave is terrifying because we know it exists but can't open it, the next place is worse in another way, because it forces historians to ask whether civilization itself began underground, or at least earlier and stranger than we expected. 9. Göbekli Tepe and the Buried Beginning. In southeastern Turkey, Göbekli Tepe shattered old assumptions the moment archaeologists understood what they were looking at. Massive carved stone pillars, some arranged in circles, decorated with animals and symbols, dating back to the 10th millennium BCE, far older than the kind of monumental ritual architecture experts once believed possible for that era. That alone would make it revolutionary. But Göbekli Tepe carries an extra layer of darkness because much of it was deliberately buried in antiquity. Think about that. This wasn't simply abandoned and covered by time. At some point, people intentionally filled it in. Why? Was it ritual closure? A shift in belief? Protection? Something else entirely? The mystery goes deeper than the pillars. For generations, the standard story was that settled farming came first, and large ritual centers came later. Göbekli Tepe forces archaeologists to question that sequence, because here was a site of astonishing symbolic and constructional complexity, appearing before agriculture seems fully established in the area. In other words, one buried site made experts ask whether the foundations of civilization were built in a different order than the textbooks claimed. And that is one of the most unsettling kinds of mystery. Not, what is this? But, what if this changes everything we thought came first? Now let's move from buried sanctuaries to something far more claustrophobic, a city hidden under the ground itself. 8. Derinkuyu, the underground city that should be impossible. In Cappadocia, Turkey, a man renovating his basement in 1963 reportedly discovered a hidden passageway. That opening led to Derinkuyu, the largest known underground city in the region. What unfolded beneath the surface was staggering. Levels descending deep underground, ventilation shafts, rooms, passageways, a labyrinth large enough to shelter thousands. Derinkuyu is the kind of place that immediately attacks your modern instincts. Why would people build this much below ground? Who organized it? How long did it take? What level of fear, invasion, instability, or planning is required before a society decides the Earth itself should become home? Even if parts of the answer involve defense and refuge, the scale still feels excessive until you're standing in the concept of it. An entire hidden world beneath an ordinary landscape. The mystery isn't that Derinkuyu doesn't exist. The mystery is that a project so ambitious could remain hidden from broad awareness for so long, and that even now, the full story of its development, use, and connections to other underground systems still fascinates researchers. A buried city is already eerie. A buried city with hundreds of entrances and multiple levels feels like the human species preparing for something it never fully wrote down. And from one hidden city, we go to a buried temple where the mystery is not size, but sound. 7. The Hypogeum of Ħal Saflieni and the chamber that changes voices. Beneath Malta lies the Hypogeum of Ħal Saflieni, an underground prehistoric complex often described as the oldest known subterranean temple. That alone would earn it a place in this video, but what keeps it in the realm of dark mystery is its strange acoustic behavior. Certain chambers are known for unusual resonance, especially a space often discussed for the way human voices seem to deepen, expand, and vibrate through the complex in ways that feel almost engineered. That doesn't mean magic. It doesn't mean paranormal forces, but it does mean something deeply unsettling. Thousands of years ago, people may have understood how sound interacts with enclosed stone space in ways that still strike modern visitors as almost supernatural. Add to that the underground setting, the temple-like layout, and the long-running fascination around the site, and you get a place where ritual, engineering, and sensory manipulation blur together. The Hypogeum is dark not because it hides monsters. It is dark because it suggests prehistoric people may have been much more deliberate about creating emotional and psychological effects than we comfortably assume. Buried spaces are never just physical. They also work on the mind. And the next place proves that even more brutally, because it turns a cave into a library and a religious mystery at the same time. 6. The Dead Sea Scroll Caves and what else may still be hidden. Near the Dead Sea, in caves at Qumran, one of the most important manuscript discoveries in history emerged: the Dead Sea Scrolls, found between 1947 and 1956. Ancient texts, fragments, and scroll material hidden in caves, surviving long enough to radically deepen our understanding of Jewish history, religious development, and the textual world around the Hebrew Bible. But every great discovery creates a shadow mystery behind it. How many scrolls were lost before scholars arrived? How many remain undiscovered in caves that haven't been searched? How much of the original library vanished into time, looting, weather, or simple neglect? Underground manuscript finds are uniquely haunting because they make absence visible. You don't just hold what was found, you feel what wasn't. The caves become more than discovery sites. They become reminders that history survives unevenly. A buried chamber can preserve a text for 2,000 years, or lose it forever because one fragment blew away, one jar cracked, one looter came first. That is what makes the Dead Sea Scroll Caves so dark as a mystery. They are a triumph of preservation, yes, but also a quiet map of everything we may never recover. And if hidden scrolls are unnerving, hidden human remains are worse, especially when the grave belongs to a king everyone knew, but nobody could locate. 5. Richard III under a parking lot. For centuries, the burial place of Richard III, the last Plantagenet king of England, was unknown. He died in 1485 at the Battle of Bosworth, and the general story of where he had been buried was remembered, but the exact site vanished beneath later development, changing streets, and the slow swallowing process of urban time. Then, in 2012, human remains were found beneath the site of the former Greyfriars Friary in Leicester, under what had become a parking lot. Scientific testing confirmed they were Richard III. What makes this dark is not just the indignity of a lost king beneath painted parking spaces. It's the reminder of how easily the ground absorbs reputation. Richard III had lived on for centuries in politics, myth, accusation, drama, and propaganda. He became larger than life in memory. And yet, his body spent generations in silence under ordinary modern pavement. That contrast is chilling. History above, oblivion below. And it forces an uncomfortable truth. The dead do not stay where stories leave them. Sometimes they stay where the soil does. Now imagine a burial even more famous than Richard's, one discovered with treasure so overwhelming it changed archaeology forever, but still left major questions unresolved. 4. Tutankhamun's tomb and the rooms that may not end there. When Howard Carter opened Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, it became one of archaeology's defining moments. The tomb was relatively intact and packed with extraordinary objects, turning the boy king into a global symbol of ancient Egypt. But for all its fame, Tutankhamun's burial did not end mystery. Instead, it generated more. Why was the tomb relatively small for a pharaoh? Was it originally intended for someone else? Could there still be hidden chambers beyond the walls? Modern debates around scans and theories about possible undiscovered spaces have kept the tomb alive not just as a treasure site, but as an unfinished question. That is what makes it dark in a way people often miss. King Tut's tomb is so famous that it feels solved. But some of the most famous sites are the hardest to finish explaining, because every answer attracts another layer of interpretation. The underground world of ancient Egypt has always had this effect. Tombs are not just graves there, they are arguments with death, carefully sealed systems of memory, identity, and power. And when one of those systems looks incomplete, the mind naturally starts pressing against the walls, wondering what else is on the other side. Now let's go somewhere less royal and more primal. Because the next underground mystery is older than kings and stranger than treasure. 3. Lascaux and the mind of people we still don't understand. In 1940, Lascaux Cave in France was accidentally rediscovered after 4 teenagers entered the cavern, reportedly following their dog's lead. Inside were prehistoric artworks, animals, symbols, compositions, created around 17,000 years ago. At one level, this is a triumph. Evidence of artistic sophistication, memory, symbolism, imagination reaching us across immense time. At another level, Lascaux is a dark mystery because it confronts us with minds we still do not fully understand. Why these animals? Why these locations in the cave? Why these specific combinations of image, ritual space, and darkness? Caves are powerful because they are not neutral galleries. To create art there, people entered enclosed darkness carrying light, intention, and probably meaning far more layered than the surviving images can fully express. The underground setting matters. These were not casual doodles on exposed walls. They were placed in a hidden world beneath the ordinary one. Lascaux leaves us with an uncomfortable feeling that prehistoric humans may have had symbolic, emotional, and ritual lives that were at least as deep as ours, just encoded in a way we can no longer fluently read. That is one of the greatest buried mysteries of all. Not what they painted, but what they thought they were doing when they did it. And from painted caves, we descend into a place where the dead may have been thrown not into honor, but into disposal. 2. The Norwich well skeletons. In 2004, archaeologists in Norwich, England, found the remains of 17 bodies at the bottom of a medieval well. The discovery was deeply unsettling from the beginning because wells are not formal cemeteries. They are functional spaces turned suddenly into burial pits. Research later suggested these were likely Jewish victims of anti-Jewish violence in medieval England, possibly connected to the period around the late 12th century. This is where underground mysteries become morally darker than treasure stories. Because beneath the earth, we do not only find monuments, we find evidence of what people tried to hide. A mass of bodies in a well is not just archaeology, it is an interrupted crime scene from history. And it poses questions no artifact ever can. Who decided they should die? Who dumped them there? How many similar stories remain underground, unexcavated because no one has yet dug in the right place? The dead in the Norwich well are a reminder that the earth preserves atrocity with the same indifference it preserves beauty. A king's tomb, a sacred temple, a cave painting, a well full of murdered people. The soil keeps them all. And for the final mystery, we return to a place that may be the most psychologically disturbing of all, because it suggests that Europe itself may be laced with ancient underground passages whose original purpose is still debated. 1. The Stone Age tunnels beneath Europe. Across parts of Europe, researchers have documented networks of ancient underground tunnels and passages that have been interpreted as stretching across multiple regions. Their dates, functions, and extent remain debated, but the idea itself is enough to make the imagination seize up. Because if these tunnels were used widely in prehistory, then what exactly were they for? Storage? Refuge? Travel? Ritual? Defense? Some combination that no modern category quite captures? This is a top-tier buried mystery because it resists a clean story. Ancient people are often imagined as tied to the surface: villages, fields, monuments, rivers, open sky. But tunnels imply something different. They imply movement through hidden space. They imply an underground world that was not accidental, but intentional. And intention is what makes underground places so unsettling. A natural cave is eerie. A human-made passage system is personal. Somebody cut those routes. Somebody chose to go below. Somebody believed there was a reason to invest labor in darkness. That is the final dark truth of this whole video. Buried mysteries are not only mysteries because they are hidden. They are mysteries because human beings chose, again and again, to put important things underground: our rulers, our rituals, our dead, our art, our secrets, and maybe even our roads. The darkest mysteries buried beneath the earth are not always the ones with no answers. They're the ones where we have just enough to realize how much is still missing. An unopened emperor's tomb, a temple deliberately buried, an underground city too vast to feel real. Scroll caves, hidden chambers, lost kings, ancient art, massacre wells, and tunnels whose original purpose still slips out of reach. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. And now I want to ask you, if you could safely uncover just one buried mystery on this list and get the full truth behind it, which one would you choose?